Welcome to Know Your Candidate podcast. This is an opportunity for candidates from across Tauranga City wards to tell their stories, their experiences, their reasonings in their own words. A format which gives them more than the public debates and profiles that you've seen already. An opportunity for the voter, the ratepayer, future resident to get to know who you want leading the city and, importantly, are they capable of doing so? Anne Pankhurst, a previous business owner, councillor and political junkie, will find out more why the candidates want to run, where they have come from, what they're going to do. So let's not wait anymore. Let's go.
Welcome to the Know Your podcast series. Jennifer Scoular, who is standing for the Mauao Maunganui ward, and welcome.
Kia ora, it's nice to be here.
So, Jen, our format today is to take the opportunity for a longer, more conversational approach to you, the candidate, so you can speak and share your own aspirations for the city. We'll take about 20 to 30 minutes answering pre-prepared questions that you have no idea about. But the most important aspect of this election is that you vote and that you encourage everyone to vote. We're very strong on that messaging. Democracy works when we all engage, actively take part, learn about our candidates, understand what is important to us for the future of the city. Remember also to spread this through all of your social media and all of your channels, and to follow us on Know Your Candidate series on thepodhub.com. So Jen, give us a little brief rundown on yourself, the who are you, the children, no children, what have you done in the past, and give us that brief bio on yourself.
Thank you. And so I'd just like to introduce myself quickly. Ina mana, ina reo, ina karangatanga maha, tēnā koutou, ko Mauao, te moanga, ko Mango Karinga Ringo, te awa, ko Mount Maunganui, Tauranga Waiwai, ko Jen Scoular aho. I'm a Tauranga resident. I am proudly the daughter of Dr. Robin and Anne Scoular. Grew up in Tauranga, and lots of people will know my mum and dad. They'll also know that I have been very active in the horticulture industries. I had 12 years leading the avocado industry here in Tauranga or for New Zealand. I had 7 years at Zespri in Mount Maunganui, and in between I was a diplomat in Hamburg, which has lots of stories attached, which I'll share over a beer sometime. I am the very happy mum of two wonderful daughters who are both educated and growing up and very happy. I am pretty sporty. Love being out there, love my association with my community. I'm honoured to be the patron of the Mount Surf Club. I was a board member of Tauranga Hockey and a hockey player for a long time. And I love the Mount. I think the Marine Parade pathway has created this whole new part of the Mount. And of course, the skate park nearby is seeing lots of people, which is terrific.
So Jen, thank you for that. Just a couple of things. You've run over a couple of things that you've had previous governance experience, but what else are you involved in governance roles? And roughly, what are their budgets, the size and scale of their budgets?
So I have been, I've been in governance roles from being on my primary school governance role. I also was on the board of International School in Hamburg. We had a budget for a $78 million new school build while I was there. I think I calculated I've done about 150 board meetings for New Zealand Avocado and Zespri. In my Zespri days as treasurer, I had to get a bank loan every year. My last year, I think we had to borrow $250 million to pay growers their summit payment. And I looked after about $600 million in foreign exchange as treasurer at Zespri. And I've been on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm currently on two boards, the International Fresh Produce Association, Australia and New Zealand. Recently been at a conference in Australia and board meeting. That's a membership organisation across produce in Australia and New Zealand, but associated with our US parent. And I'm on the chair of House of Science, which is an amazing startup company in Tauranga with amazing growth over the last 10 years. And we're trying to get curiosity within kids by delivering science in experimental form into primary schools.
And I have to say the House of Science is a phenomenal initiative. So thank you very much for that. So have you had any experience worked in with or for TCC, Tauranga City Council?
I haven't been actively involved, although we have, in my role as New Zealand Avocado, we did have to, when the Food Act came in, we had to ensure that we had processes in place for our growers to register as under the Food Act to supply avocados in the New Zealand market. And otherwise, I've only, as a resident in Tauranga, had dealings with the Tauranga City Council in that way.
Fantastic, thank you. So what do you consider the main role of the mayor and the councillors to be?
We've got a city that's got 165,000 residents. We've got a city council, we've got Tauranga City Council is the entity that is tasked with ensuring that the infrastructure is in place to allow the city to operate. And I see the mayor and the councillors as governing Tauranga City Council itself to ensure that it is delivering to its ratepayers who are funding it, to ensure that we are looking after the economic, social, environment, health of Tauranga itself and its residents.
Fantastic. Now, the skill set that I'd really love to drill down on is the ability and experience that you may have in managing complex commercial and political environments.
I think there's a number of examples, but one I'm going to give is I was the inaugural industry chair of a cross New Zealand biosecurity council. So it was a partnership with the government and with Ministry for Primary Industries. We had 22 sectors around the table. So as avocados, we were quite a little sector. We obviously had zespri and apples from a horticulture perspective, but we had beef and lamb there. We had New Zealand dairy there. We had wine growers there. So it was all primary industries in New Zealand. We had to work out how to pay for biosecurity responses. And that could be recently the Mycoplasma bovis. It could be fruit fly. It could be, hopefully never will be, foot and mouth disease. And I had to get consensus around that table with very different stakeholder views and all of the representatives at the table seeking the views of their communities. And we had to get consensus view to actually produce a government industry agreement deed and make it operate, which we did successfully. And we drove some changes in how we managed the biggest risk to primary industries in New Zealand, which is biosecurity.
It is a big challenge, that biosecurity, isn't it? I don't think we understand as a lovely little island nation how safe we are till somebody brings a beastie in. So well done on that. So one of the other questions, if funding for the huge infrastructure spend is one of the biggest issues facing the city, do you have any other solutions other than ratepayer revenue?
I think that's I'm sorry, that's quite a simplistic question on a very complex topic. And I am a fellow chartered accountant. I have looked at the accounts of the annual reports of Tauranga City Council and had a look at some other annual accounts to see what those comparisons are. I had a little bit to do also in my time in Hamburg. I happened to have a very good friend who was the economics senator in Hamburg, so I had a little bit of understanding of how that worked financially. It's a huge topic, and it's not something that we could answer in a 20-minute podcast. I think it's really important that we recognise that, yes, there are different ways of raising capital. Yes, there are different ways that raising of that capital ends up on a balance sheet. And yes, sometimes that allows more funding or more borrowing than others. But at the end of the day, any borrowings have to be repaid. And yes, there are different interest rates charged, but they're still quite big interest rates. So the topic of funding is huge. I think there's a number of initiatives that even the long-term plan talks about some of those. Other councils are looking. We have to get central government on board. We do need support with our growth. We do need to understand how, when Tauranga is housing the biggest port in New Zealand, it's a wonderful asset for Tauranga, but also it's got a lot of cost attached. How do we make sure we're balancing the value to New Zealand and the value to Tauranga when it's without making Tauranga residents pay all of the costs of that, for example?
So the latter part of your answer was perfect. And you had obviously had a bit of time to think about it, because I agree it's a very complex topic, but it is also something that I would hope future councillors are considering, that you can't all look back on the rate relief. And you brought up some really good examples at the end of your answer, so that was excellent. So another one, given that you govern at large, and how do you see the collective action when it's not what you think your ratepayers would be thrilled about, or some of your ratepayers? How would you manage that conflict, that you have to make a decision at large that isn't necessarily palatable to your ratepayers? How do you manage that?
Something I'm finding I've actually been doing, obviously trying to meet as many of the community as I can in the lead up to the election on the 20th of July, just so, again, promoting that and getting everyone to vote. I'm dropping in at shops in the Mount and a bit in Tauranga, and I'm just asking people in the street, asking people in restaurants I've been. There is a lack of awareness of what's happening in council. If you ask people how they've dealt with council, are they happy with their dealings with council as ratepayers? Are they getting delivery from their rates? I haven't got many yeses. And so I think we have to look at, is the council doing the job for Tauranga that it needs to do, that it's using ratepayer money to do? I think we really need to look at, are we getting value out of our rates? Talking about the getting bang for our ratepayer buck. And I think we really have to look at, say, are there better ways of actually ensuring we're getting value for the rates that we are paying?
Right. So what is your reaction to the view that Tauranga is part of New Zealand Inc. and the economy? So we have to think more nationally than locally, because what happens here matters.
What happens in Tauranga does matter. We've got the largest port in New Zealand. We also are we've been one of the fastest growing cities in New Zealand. And New Zealand, at the end of the day, with 5.5 million people, is pretty tiny. So if we're not talking as New Zealand Inc., and I worked for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and as a New Zealand diplomat in Germany, I went to Germany thinking, New Zealand's this, really important country. And then you realise that round the EU table, when the ambassadors were talking, New Zealand is this, tiny little blip in the ocean, actually an ocean that no one has to fly over. So we have to work together as NZ Inc. We have to say, how do we collaborate better? How do we actually, even from a basic level of, if somebody's doing something, let's use templates, let's copy. In my role at New Zealand Avocado, and I'd had 8 years with Zespri, I came into a very a sector in the doldrums, and we didn't have any money, we didn't have much culture. I really needed to understand what was happening and needed to bring some solutions without too much money. I realised that we could copy quite a lot of what I'd done at Zespri. We could copy what they were doing in Apple, and we could learn from them, because they obviously did things that they didn't do perfectly. Well, let's take the learnings and run with that, which we did really successfully. We went to Wellington, we got some terrific funding out of central government, which was the catalyst for our industry trebling in value over my tenure at New Zealand Avocado. So we have to work together. We have to be collaborative, even around the council table with our other councils in Tauranga and wider, and New Zealand Inc., because we're a little country and we really need to help each other as much as we can, learn from each other, and actually be willing to copy where great things have been done before. Well, let's do that to go forward, and to go forward without huge resources, because they're never going to be available.
So I'm just going to follow up on the NZ avocado, because I do know that you spent a lot of time there. And I do know that you took an industry that was in the doldrums and made it a world force, really, an interesting part. So where did you take it from and to?
So the industry value when I started was 82 million, and our in 2021-22 we got up to 231 million.
Wow.
So we trebled in value. We didn't, so that at the same time our volume went up about just under twice. So it was definitely converting volume into new value, and productivity at a grower level actually quadrupled over that time. We also, I think one of the things we did was we just got together as an industry. When I started, our exporters didn't really talk. We didn't do anything in the New Zealand market, which is our closest market and one that everyone saw every day. And I didn't put a brand spanking new strategy in place. I did some really solid basics, or led a strategy that was just improving on the basics. Collaborating, talking together, getting competitors around the table and actually figuring out that there's a whole lot they don't have to compete on. Sure, they still compete on price and customers, but there's a whole lot on quality, on supply chain, on new markets that we could actually collaborate on. So let's figure out what we can do sharing and actually drive value for everyone. And we did that in New Zealand, in the Australian market, and into Asia.
So speaking of collaborating, I'm going to ask a really tricky question of you, because obviously that's how you created the general size and scale of it, New Zealand avocado. We have 3 councils here in the region. Can you see that approach happening there also?
I think it's a no-brainer that it has to be discussed. I think we will probably have a very a sensible collaboration under the whatever ends up with Three Waters and our water infrastructure with Western Bay of Plenty. I am very, very keen to see buses in Tauranga being managed and owned and infrastructure by the same council. To me, it's just crazy that, number one, I think it's crazy our buses aren't great. But number two, why would you have that split between 2 councils? And from some base, I think we can, there's lots of things we need to look at to say, how can we do this smarter, more efficiently, and adding value? And it doesn't have to be, let's go for the great big, let's all put them all together, let's merge at once. Let's try things in as mergers or collaborations and see how we can build on it from there.
So only a few more questions. So how do you manage competing interests like reasonable rates, new funding models, infrastructure, deficit and debt? And how will you choose between investing in growth and rates relief, where there is a lot of angst, as you know?
There is a lot of angst, and there's a lot of work to do in terms of understanding that. In terms of the long-term plan, there's a lot of discussion at the moment. There's some that are saying they want to start again. I absolutely support the work and consultation already that's been done on the long-term plan. I think it's a really good document. There are some of the bigger projects that I think as a council need to be reviewed to make sure that the new council and mayor have all the information that is possibly available but not in public yet. And I think we certainly would need to review some of those. And at the end of the day, we have to say, is it going to be financially feasible for the council to spend that money? Also, remembering the long-term plan gets reviewed. There's an annual plan, and there's every 3 years you review the 10-year plan, and those things need to be understood and have a process in place to renew those. So I'm not hearing, I'm certainly hearing more positively that people do want our city to progress. They do recognise an underinvestment in the last 20, 25 years. They are my community in Mauao, Mount Maunganui, is really appreciating the marine path and the skate park and want to see some improvements, want to see improvements on Totara Street and Hewlett's Road. So want to keep seeing that. And obviously are challenged with transport. And I'm a cyclist myself, not a crazy one. I definitely still have a car, and I certainly use the car when it's more convenient. But they're liking the fact that we're looking at different ways of transporting. They like the ferries. So there's lots of competing views and ideas, but at the end of the day, people also want to see a competent council that has made decisions, that has said the decision is made, we're going forward, but we also need to have much better communication out of those projects saying what's happened, why has it happened, is it being fixed? So even the marine path was completed end of December. Fantastic, so much use. And then a couple of months ago, there was suddenly, I went out on my bike one Sunday afternoon, there were 6 areas where there were big fences up again. I went, wow, try to find out what had happened. It took a week for anyone to say cracks had appeared, ratepayers weren't paying it, and they were fixed a couple of weeks later. But people want to know, and there needs to be better information going out about what's happening in a way that we can understand what it is, not great big report.
So just a very personal question. Do you think the fact that you're a chartered accountant is going to help you understand the complex financial regime that happens out of TCC, or do you think it will be helpful for you? Because I think you're could potentially be the only accountant at the table.
I think I'm a numbers person. I understand numbers and I will question numbers. It's definitely an asset that I would bring to the council. I think as somebody who has worked in quite complex environments from a numbers perspective, I think it's definitely an asset I would bring. But I also recognise that others have had commercial experience and are able to look at numbers. But it's amazing actually at the moment how many are flying around, and I'm not sure that's helpful. I think a new council has to come in, seriously look at the numbers and understand them. And I would definitely suggest that as a chartered accountant with 30 years of numbers and understanding financial situations and also governing risk, because I think that we have to be able to understand, we have to grow. If you grow, there's some risk, and governing that risk is really important. So understanding and reviewing over time what's happening to the growth and the numbers that are attached to that growth is really important.
That's a very good, because the risk is huge.
The risk is huge, absolutely.
And there's a sort of a double-edged sword on the risk. The risk if we don't do it is huge. The risk if we do it is huge. So the challenge for the council is to make, one would hope, the right decision about either of those profiles. But Jen, thank you very much. It's been an excellent 25, 30 minutes. I know it's gone really quickly for you.
It has, yes.
And I wish you luck for the future, and to remember to encourage voting. It's very, very important. Spread this podcast through your own channels and to follow us on thepodhub.com. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I ask for the people that are listening for my vote for Jen Scoular for the Mount. Thank you.
Tune in to the next episode of Know Your Candidate to be informed on who you want to run your city. Got feedback and like to comment your thoughts on the episode? Connect with Know Your Candidate on social. This has been the podhub.com experience. Check out thepodhub.com for other podcasts and how you can even do your own.